WVNY. This is Local 22 News at 11 in high definition.
A sigh of relief from the North Country. To quote the governor tonight, the nightmare is over. David Sweat has been captured, and you know his accomplice, Richard Matt, is dead. Good evening. I'm Lauren Maloney.
And I'm Joe Smith. Our reporters are live across New York. Megan Carpenter is standing by live in Malone with the latest on our hero, Sergeant.
But first, let's get to Local 22's Nick Peralt, who is live at Albany Medical Center. David Sweat was transported there around 9 o'clock tonight. So, Nick, what are we hearing about Sweat's condition?
Well, as of right now, Medical Director Dennis McKenna would say David Sweat is in critical condition. That is all he would tell us right now. Again, critical condition. Dennis McKenna, Medical Director, as far as David Sweat's condition, critical right now. Would not talk into would David Sweat speak? Did he say anything upon his arrival? Didn't say anything. But one of the main reasons why David Sweat was transported here, they deal with 11,000 transfers a year. And when he was transported here, you could hear applause and people chanting. David Sweat arrived here. Again, it's very important. Dennis McKenna says that David Sweat how he is handled does not change, given his high profile.
This list could grow. This would be consistent with any other type of multi-trauma patient that we might receive. You would often require the services of many different providers: emergency medicine, trauma doctors, critical care doctors, radiology doctors, and vascular surgeons are all involved in his care at this time.
Again, that was Albany Medical Center Medical Director Dennis McKenna. Critical condition, David Sweat. That's all we have at this point. Make sure to stay with us for the very latest. Reporting live from Albany Medical Center. Nick Perot, back to you.
Okay, Nick, thank you very much. Well, after a quiet day and a half, it all came to a critical point around 3 o'clock this afternoon.
David Sweat caught just about a mile and a half from the Canadian border. This is a picture of him in custody. Local 22's Alex Rose picks up our coverage again from New York, where he was first sighted. Alex, good evening.
Joe, I am right off of Coveytown Road, a little northeast of Constable. Behind me, the fields where this all could have very well gone down. You can see the tire tracks where law enforcement possibly tried to cut off David Sweat, but it was Sergeant Jay Cook that was patrolling this area when he saw David Sweat. When he tried to engage him, Sweat tried to make a break for it, approaching a tree line, a couple of yards beyond me and through the darkness there. But of course, Sergeant Cook stopped him.
The sergeant recognized Mr. Sweat, obviously from his description. Encountered and engaged Mr. Sweat. Mr. Sweat fled. The trooper gave chase. The trooper was unable to catch him on foot. At one point, the sergeant decided to discharge his weapon, hitting Mr. Sweat twice in the torso.
Now, while that was happening, hundreds of law enforcement swarmed the area, blocking the public off at a local church. Now, Sweat was not armed when he was taken down, as 2 ambulances drove him to Alice Hyde Hospital in Malone. Of course, we know that that was not his final destination in all of this. Hundreds of law enforcement really swarmed that area, as we laid witness to that earlier, with sirens blaring, of course, for one final effort to apprehend this last final fugitive in his attempt to escape. Now, we are learning more about the details of their escape and also how Sweat and Matt were able to survive for 23 days out in the wild. Let's get the latest details from Local 22's Megan Carpenter. She joins us live in Malone outside of New York State Police Barracks. Megan, over to you.
Well, Alex, as you well know, with the more than 1,300 law enforcement officials that have been combing this area around the clock for the past 3 weeks, it ultimately only took one New York State Police sergeant to capture David Sweat and bring us to this moment we're at here tonight. Sergeant Jay Cook is a 21-year veteran with New York State Police Troop B, so he knows the search area very well. And at today's press conference in Malone with Governor Andrew Cuomo, we learned Cook was simply doing a perimeter check this afternoon when he spotted David Sweat. Governor Cuomo made it a point to let folks know today Cook is a hard-working family man.
I said to Sergeant Cook, who has 2 daughters, 16 and 17, I said, well, you go home tonight and tell your daughters that you're a hero. With teenage girls, that'll probably last a good 24 hours, and then you just go back to being a regular dad, as I well know.
He approached him. He did an excellent job. I think he did a very courageous and brave act of policing, and as the governor said, we've commended him, and I couldn't be prouder of him.
And both Governor Cuomo and Superintendent D'Amico thanked all law enforcement officials, all agencies up and down today at that press conference for all of their hard work. They also thanked multiple times the community in all of the areas that have been searched. As we know, many of these areas have been turned upside down for the past 3 weeks, and many law enforcement officials have been following tips they've been given from civilians, more than 2,500 of them, they said in the press conference we heard today. I'm sure many people breathing a sigh of relief, many community members just thankful that things can get back to normal now. And with that part of the story, we head to Local 44's Stacy DeSilva.
Actually, Megan, we are going to take it. We also learned more about how Sweat and Matt remained hidden, frankly, so well.
Superintendent D'Amico said they received DNA from David Sweat off pepper shakers. This was in the cabin off Route 41 where bedding was found last week. D'Amico said the escapees sprinkled the pepper to throw off the scent of the dogs. Also, Governor Cuomo says in the processing of escaping from Clinton Correctional, one of the prisoners came upon a toolbox. The toolbox was unlocked, and Cuomo says one of the inmates cut the lock, giving them access to more tools. Vermont Governor Peter Shumlin also offering his thanks to law enforcement for their tireless work in the search, saying Sweat and Matt were captured thanks to the commitment of Governor Andrew Cuomo and the New York State Police. He adds today's capture ends a difficult time for many in the region, particularly for the people around Dannemora.
And as you can imagine, celebration in the North Country coming up. The greater community of Dannemora thanking law enforcement and COs as things will start to return to normal.
And a first for New York's governor. He officiated his first gay marriage in front of an historic location.
You're watching Local 22 News at 11. Local news that matters to Northern New York, Vermont, and New Hampshire.